guys, extra team and family on this Monday. How are you doing? We are talking about mental health and psychic numbing, something that I knew about, but I didn't know of the actual term attached to it. So one of our wonderful producers that helps us out here in the morning, Andrew Dorn, did this whole story all by himself. You hear his voice. He did all the reporting. I love it.
Why are you treating him like he's a third grader?
No, I just mean like during this pandemic, we've gotten to hear stories like from our photographers who you would never see their face or hear their voice.
Sure.
And it's like all hands on deck. And so Andrew Dorn put together a fabulous story that's really fascinating. And I want to talk about it, but I want to show you the story first and explain it. So let's play it right now.
Remember the story from 2002 of Hawkette, the dog lost at sea? Probably not, but what happened with Hawkette teaches us a lot about psychic numbing. In March of 2002, a fire broke out on an oil tanker 800 miles south of Hawaii. The boat and its crew drifted for over 2 weeks before a passing cruise ship rescued them. It was only after the tanker had been abandoned that the crew realized they were one short. The captain's dog had been left behind. Somewhere in the Pacific, a 2-year-old terrier floated alone on a big, derelict ship. The media picked up the story and word spread. Within days, thousands of dollars in donations poured in to fund rescue efforts for Hawkette. The Hawaiian Humane Society paid a private company $48,000 to look for the ship, but to no avail. Eventually, it was the U.S. Coast Guard who redirected taxpayer funds and hired a boat to recover the tanker and the dog on it. Now here's the science of why we care about one little dog, but maybe not all the dogs who might need help around the world. Research shows that we will go to great lengths to save one life, but we become indifferent when a story is about a big group of people, like the thousands of coronavirus deaths or a disaster in a foreign country. Why is that?
The feeling system has kind of very limited range. It can't ramp up.
That's University of Oregon psychology professor Paul Slovic, who has spent his whole life studying why people do what they do and why they stop caring.
The difference between 0 people at risk and 1 is huge. But if I told you that there were 87 people in danger in some situation, and then I told you that there's 88, you won't feel any different.
In fact, not only does our concern plateau with additional lives at risk, but when the number becomes too big, our compassion might actually decrease. We care less when we should care more.
At some level, we may not feel anything. They're just numbers. Like if 100,000, a million, we can't relate to those numbers, and we lose feeling. We call it the compassion fade or compassion collapse.
In his 50 years of research, Slovic found something else that was startling about the way our brains work. We are less willing to help if we think what we're doing only helps a little.
If the need is great and our contribution is a small proportion, then we kind of get the feeling, well, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's a drop in the bucket.
Slovic ran an actual experiment that presented 2 groups the same picture of a little girl in need. The first group was provided a description of the girl. The second was shown the same picture, but with the description of the huge problem that affected her and millions of others. Slovic found people were willing to donate more money when told just the girl's story, and less, a lot less, to the one that described the bigger problem.
We call it pseudo-inefficacy. Pseudo because it's a false sense that we're not effective, when in fact we are doing something, albeit a small proportion.
So it's hardwired into how we think and emotionally react. That's why people begged the U.S. Coast Guard to rescue Hawkette the dog, but maybe didn't care that much about all the dogs in all the shelters around the world. It's psychic numbing, and it happens to all of us.
Isn't that fascinating, you guys? And I love just the easy graphics it is to kind of understand that. So we've got a lot of people watching. I'm watching you guys on Facebook. Chime in live with us. I know some people were kind of talking about it already on the stream, but have you guys watched, when you watch movies or something, and I know this kind of phenomenon, like I can't stand to see animals. Even in a movie, if like an animal is hurt or something, you're just like, oh, but then you watch some violent film when, people are dying or getting hurt and it doesn't like affect you as much.
Well, I do know that, and this what this piece speaks to, right, is this basically the way they explain it. We have a certain level of compassion. And that level of compassion you think would grow as the number of people involved in a tragedy grows, right? But it just does not work that way. Our minds cannot wrap itself around huge numbers. We can't do it with math, period. And apparently we can't do it with stories like this, where I think a great example was the story of that soccer team, that youth soccer team who was trapped in that mine for all those weeks.
Right.
And it was a number that we could certainly relate to. It was like 12.
Right,
11 players and a coach. What are those 12 up to? Are they all going to get out? 12, I mean, you can picture 12 right now in your mind so easily. You can see 12 faces. And we wanted to know just how each one of them was doing. Did each one of them get out? It was not going to be a happy story unless every single one of them got out. But if we said there was, 297 people trapped in that in that mine, well, you can't really see that number as well.
It seems less personal.
And if we told you 250 got out, you'd be like, oh, that's good news. Most of them survived. But geez, 47 didn't. You know what I mean?
Quick math, Carney. Good job.
Thank you, because I didn't even think about it. Again, that's called psychic numbing.
Yeah.
Don't think, and your mind might actually work. But that's true, right? I mean, if you think about it, it sounds horrible to say as a human being, but I guess what I'm asking our viewers to do is to weigh in and say, do you agree with this concept of psychic numbing? If you think about it, do you admit that you fall into this psychic numbing trap yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think we all have to admit that.
I mean, I think most of us.
Go ahead, Rod.
I mean, I think when you listen to that story, you realize, I realize that's absolutely true. That's absolutely, unfortunately, I'm going to say the way we think about it. I wish it was true in the world of weather. I find that in the world of weather, if you miss something by a low number, you miss a snowstorm by 1 inch, nobody cares. If you miss a snow number by 12 inches, everybody's crazed with anger.
Yes.
That's a great point, Rod.
Some legitimacy to it.
Hey, have you ever been off by, let's say, 392 inches? I bet you've never reached like that great a misstep. Your numbers are always still relatively low. You're either wrong this much or wrong that much. You've never been wrong that much.
No.
Not by 392 inches, no, sir.
Yeah.
Psychic numbing is what we're talking about.
Comments
we
here.
do. Jennifer Taft, my goodness, you're going to win an award. I hate playing favorites. But my goodness, if Jennifer Taft doesn't deliver at least one solid comment each morning on the streams, she says, and this is perfect for what we're talking about, kindness, she says, is a muscle that you have to exercise.
Oh, okay.
I think you're absolutely right about that, Jennifer. You have to exercise your kindness muscle. If you don't use it, you'll lose it.
That's true. It's probably with, any emotion. I like Diana Gadot. She says, it's that way when my house gets messier than normal. I just shut down. I stopped caring about it.
You know what? That is absolutely true. If you look over at the kitchen sink and you see, I've got
a couple dishes,
I've got 7 dishes over there. Take care. If you look after like you had some kind of Thanksgiving dinner,
it's just like,
and oh my God, I'm going to bed. I'll deal with that tomorrow. I'm out.
The dishes right now, are insane. Let's see. I thought I saw a great comment on here. Where did it go?
See, when there's too many comments, Nina, you can't wrap your mind around them. You need a small number of comments.
Well, Jennifer, again, she said more empathy comes with a personal connection. When we connect as humans, we are more involved. Look at COVID until it affects you as an individual as well. That's so true, and we've been saying it's only a matter of time until all of us has some, knows someone in your circle, or you know someone personally that has it or has died from it. And we will likely get to that point, and then it'll become real, for a lot of us. Sierra Perry says, yes, it's that way with my work.
TJ Loika chimes in this morning, Nina and Rod, saying, well, it just says people, not numbers. That's TJ's comment. People, not numbers. And if I can read into your 3-word comment, TJ, I think what you're saying is it should be about people, right? And not about numbers. And honestly, in our coverage, what I know we're trying to do as a news station, because every day we update you on the COVID numbers, and it does sound very robotic. Yesterday, the state of Oregon reported 349 new cases and 2 new deaths. I mean, there's just nothing behind those numbers other than those are the facts. But what we try to do is go tell you some stories behind those numbers. Let's talk about that one person who's been dealing with COVID symptoms, say, since March, and now they're in this 4-month battle. And when we can share those stories with you, I know for me personally, and I hope for our viewers, that really puts it into perspective. It's no longer a number, it's actually a person's story.
Yeah, because you get to hear emotions that, you felt, and symptoms that you've maybe gone through in the past with other illnesses or something. And we had that crazy story of we did a KGW investigation, our Kristen Severance, into literally the numbers of how Oregon counts coronavirus deaths in the state, and they're not differentiating between if you die with coronavirus or if you die of coronavirus. Yeah. And it is kind of fascinating because they told a very personal story of a woman who, was it her dad who passed away? He was diagnosed with cancer and shortly thereafter also tested positive for coronavirus. So his senior living facility then actually said that he has, you have recovered from coronavirus after this certain amount of time. He passed away. And the family says, he passed away from cancer. But the state lists him as a coronavirus death. And so a lot of people feel like this is skewing the numbers. And Colorado was counting their coronavirus deaths the very same way, but there was such public outcry that they stopped doing that. But it's just like once these numbers start piling up and you don't hear those personal stories every once in a while, then it just becomes kind of generic out there headlines.
Before we get too far into Kristen's reporting, I believe that is going to be the topic of tomorrow's Sunrise Extra.
Yeah, stay tuned for that tomorrow.
So stay tuned for that. A shout out to another regular viewer of ours on the Facebook stream, Jeff Lucas. What's up, Jeff Lucas? Happy Monday to you. Jeff says, and this is a great point, salespeople, he says, know all too well that personal stories sell a lot more than statistics do.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of times, you can throw out these numbers. If you're a salesperson saying TV, our show has a rating of 3.1 and theirs only has a rating of 2.9. Well, what does that mean? But if they go to the business and say, hey, listen, we can tell you right now that these people right here, like this person, Jane and Joe Smith, they bought the car that you're selling because they saw the advertisement on KGW. Well, then that's going to click with someone. That makes it very real. It's not just a number anymore. It's a personal story.
But yeah, it is for me it's like animals versus people. Yeah. I don't know. And in the story that we played, it talks about that little dog, which I did not remember that. Did you remember that story?
18 years ago? No, 2002.
Yeah.
No, I did not. But again, the story was about the little dog who was abandoned on a ship that was lost at sea. All the crew members got off safely, and then they realized, we forgot the dog.
And the whole world rallies around this dog.
Yeah. All these efforts were made to save that dog. Rod, I know you were going to chime in there from your Clark County home studio.
No, I know we're talking about COVID, and I've lost the comment, and I apologize, I don't have the viewer's name, but early on there was a viewer who said her little one, I think under 5 years old, if I remember the comment, is going to get the COVID swab test.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
so,
I saw
wanted
that.
To say that. Yeah, I wanted to say we wish all the best to our little one, and hopefully that's...
and she was saying, how do you kind of get over that anxiety of waiting? Yeah. They've been waiting for a couple days for the results. Yeah, no kidding.
That was Katie Hesseman. I'm looking at Katie's comment right now. She says, yes, that she hopes COVID hasn't hit their family. Her 2-year-old had that nose swab Saturday night. So, Katie, I know that can be a psychological roller coaster right now, waiting for those test results. And like Rod said, we obviously hope the best and hope that that's not COVID. And we hope whatever your child may be sick with is something that can be dealt with quickly and easily.
Yeah.
Going through some of the other comments.
What else we got? We have... Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
I'm waiting there,
Drew.
Rod.
Go ahead.
I've got other comments. Well, I was just sifting through them right now. The story that our producer, Andrew Dorn, put together on psychic numbing, it does have a second part to it. So tomorrow on the Sunrise Show, and yes, we could probably play it for you right now on Sunrise Extra, but we're going to make you wait. Tomorrow on the Sunrise TV show, we're going to play that part 2, and then we can talk about it some more on Sunrise Extra tomorrow if you like. But we're going to talk about ways where we can actually, and it's kind of like our viewers have already said, we can train our mind to handle some of these larger numbers in regards to tragedies, where we can handle them more compassionately. How we can train our minds to overcome this psychic numbing. There is a trick to it, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we do part 2 of psychic numbing. But I never even heard of psychic numbing. I mean, it makes sense now, and I understand the idea, but I didn't know it had a term attached to it.
And we really try, I mean, you were talking about this like in our newsroom, we really, really try to, I mean, COVID aside, you know, with any story, we really try and find a personal angle. It's like, you know, instead of talking to officials all the time, and there is a TV station in town where that is their policy, is like they don't interview officials or police, and they want to get the actual person, you know, that's involved in that story, because it does make just such more of a difference to you.
It was funny because I was wondering if we have new viewers to the stream, if they see any of us looking down at our phones as if we don't care about what's being discussed on the show.
Yeah.
Does that look like we are
This is how we're watching your live comments, you guys. So
And sure enough, though, as I thought that, Nina, I looked down and TJ Loika, whose comment I read earlier, says, watching news anchors play on their cell phones on social media, it's like we're living in a science fiction film.
We're talking to you, TJ.
There's only one way to hear or see what you're saying.
Yeah.
We have to look down at our phones.
Yep. I've got the YouTube live stream up. I'm watching the comments. I am looking at this iPad because I'm going to say hi to Brian Meacham. He is watching us from New Zealand. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in New Zealand. I don't know what time it is there. Let me know. What time is it there? He says we're living in crazy times. Brian Railfan says, hi KGW, hi everyone else. Good morning. He's one of our loyal YouTube viewers. So yes, that's how we're checking on you guys. And I'm watching you on Twitter. Matt Bender says the way that the state counts coronavirus deaths is what's making so many question the numbers of deaths. Yeah, that's our KGW investigation. Matt, stay tuned for tomorrow's Sunrise Extra. We're going to be talking all about it. Kristen Severance going to be joining us live about her investigation into that.
Jennifer Taft weighs back in reply in regards to TJ's comment that we're insensitive because we keep looking down at our cell phone. She says, she laughs and says, you are all uncaring slime. And how about this? Rod, you can weigh in on this as well if you'd like, because David Jeremy Roper, I like the three names that pop up on our stream. David Jeremy Roper says, sounds like BS. And I was wondering if people would react that way to psychic numbing. Are you calling the idea of psychic numbing, David, BS? And if so, please explain. Do you not believe that your mind sort of shuts off, tunes out when these numbers in a tragedy or a story become too large? Rod, I always think that you're kind of a guy that will call BS on a story immediately if you see it. But are you buying into this?
No, I thought the story was really well done, and for me, I perfectly relate to the story that was told. You know, just something happens horrible to one person, especially if it's somebody maybe, in my case, close to where I live in Clark County, because I can relate to where do they live,
Yep.
How did this happen, and what's going on. Something happens to 500 people, just pick a random number. And I think we do kind of, I don't know if dismiss is the correct word, but I don't think we get as emotionally attached to it as readily as if it's just something happening to a few people. So I would say that to me, that's true. It's kind of sad, right, in a way, to think about it. But if you haven't seen that story, I'm assuming people can go back and watch it on KGW.com.
Well, it's kind of like
pretty good story. Really well
it's
told.
great. It is on, and you can check it out on our YouTube page too. My husband has been a firefighter for forever, since he was 18, and he's 43 now. And a lot of people in first responder status or who work at hospitals, dispatch workers, police, you have to have that built in, and you get better at it. That emotional detachment. And part of it comes from, you just need to get your work done. And as a paramedic, you need to remember, how many doses of medicine do I need to inject in this person in a hurry? And so you're thinking facts like that and information to keep someone alive or to do your job. But you see some bad things. And my husband calls them brain tattoos. And, when you just see something that you will see, you can call up immediately forever and ever afterwards. But you have to have that. And to some extent, reporters out in the field have to have that as well in order to just keep going. I mean, we see bad things as well. I mean, not oftentimes right when they happen, but you're subjected to just learning about and studying constantly bad news all the time. And so, I mean, we all have a little bit of that as well built in, and just for mental health sake.
I want to say that's slightly different, though. Because we're not there in that
Right,
case.
that's
It's
what
not
I mean.
a term of numbers. It's a term of you have to desensitize yourself to be able to live in that world where you're constantly dealing with bad things happening to people, just to speak generically. And the news business is that way. I mean, every day somebody gets shot, somebody gets in traffic accidents. All these bad things are happening to people, and if you get overly wrapped up in just one event.
Yeah. I mean, think of that, Drew. Were you here last week when we had the guy from Mercy Corps who was in Lebanon?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine what he has seen, or any of these international aid workers. You're going from disaster to abject poverty,
right.
and, people starving and begging for your help. I mean, that has got to be just an emotional toll to carry with you, but that you're helping them at least.
Those people are there specifically to help those people out, so you can't turn off the emotions, right? You are dealing with the human element all the time, but I can't imagine that either. I know we are running up against the clock. The longer we've gone here, the more viewers we've picked up, but we do have a time limit on this Sunrise Extra. Why don't we close with one final viewer comment, because I thought this was a nice way to close, and it comes from Lindsay Riddle. I hope I say your last name correctly here. Riddell. Lindsay, good morning to you. She says, I hope you all are having a pretty great day so far. She says, people need to learn how to be nice to each other during this pandemic, because sometimes numbing can make people angry rather than just emotionless. She says, I hope everyone will have something good happen to them today and really during this entire pandemic time. Thank you, Lindsay. Those are kind words.
That is a great thing to leave on. Thank you so much, you guys. Okay, so tune in tomorrow. We're going to have Kristen Severance, our investigator, on live with us to talk about how Oregon counts the number of coronavirus deaths, because right now they are not distinguishing between if you, say, got tested positive for coronavirus and the next day you're hit and killed by a bus, they're writing you down as you died of coronavirus. It's wild.
It's two words that make a big difference. Whether you have it with it
and from.
Yeah, did you die with it or did you die from it? And really, when the state adds up the numbers, they don't care which it was. Whether you just had it or whether you actually died from it, you're going on the list as a COVID death.
Yeah, exactly. And they say it's to keep the case counts accurate and for contact tracing. Anyway, we're going to dive into that with Kristen live tomorrow. Look at this beautiful shot this morning from Cannon Beach. Try and have a good Monday, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.